When I think about the St. Louis Rams as a total organization, especially heading into the 2013 season, there's really one phrase that I use to describe these guys. Watch out. These guys are very much under the radar. I think Les Snead is perhaps one of the very best general managers in the game of football today. One of those young, exciting minds that I think really grasps what he's doing, both in terms of the draft and in terms of free agency as well. And on the flip side of that, you've got an experienced veteran head coach in Jeff Fisher, who has a way of doing things, who came in his first year in St. Louis and I think did some really good things to help turn around the culture in St. Louis and institute a different way of doing business. This tandem of Jeff Fisher and Les Snead could potentially do some very big things in St. Louis, maybe as soon as this year. I'm very high on the St. Louis Rams this year. I have been since the end of last season. I think this is a team that could potentially surprise a lot of people. Could disappoint me in my predictions, but I think they have the potential to definitely surprise a lot of people. Now, ultimately, this organization will be measured long term for their decision to not draft RG3 when they had the number 2 overall pick in the 2012 draft. That will ultimately be 5, 7, 10 years from now how this organization is measured. Because if Bradford doesn't work out, he doesn't become the man, and RG3 does and leads the Redskins to the Super Bowl, doesn't matter how many good players they got from that trade in St. Louis. It's always going to be measured against, yeah, but you could have just had RG3 and not had to worry any about it. The point being is that this is year number 4 for Sam Bradford. He needs to put up or shut up. I am not a huge Sam Bradford fan by any stretch of the imagination. But if there's ever going to be a point in time where he establishes himself as a leader of the St. Louis Rams organization, as a face of the franchise and a legit, at least franchise NFL starting quarterback, it's going to be this year. The Rams went out and signed Jake Long in the offseason, Jared Cook in the offseason. So now he's got a weapon at tight end he didn't have before. Now he's got a left tackle to protect his blind side that he really didn't have before. Gone is Steven Jackson, but they also drafted guys like Tavon Austin. And you throw that in the mix with young receivers such as Chris Givens and Austin Pettis and maybe even a Brian Quick, a Stedman Bailey. There's potentially a young, exciting arsenal of weapons for Sam Bradford to work with. Now, he doesn't have Steven Jackson back there anymore, but I still think he has a running back combination that should be able to get the job done for him in Daryl Richardson, last year's 7th-round pick, along with Isaiah Pead, last year's 2nd-round pick, and then Zach Stacy, this year's 5th-round pick. This is an offense that I think could really come together and gel very nicely in 2013, and Sam Bradford's going to need to step up and be a major player. Is Bradford going to be the man? We're going to find out. Will Tavon Austin, who was taken in the top 10, be that type of Percy Harvin, Randall Cobb type of weapon that this offense desperately needs to bring some big plays and, more importantly, some excitement and some matchup problems for opposing defenses in the NFL? And can they really replace Steven Jackson's production with those 3 running backs that I named? They're going to need to, because sometimes a quarterback's best friend is being able to turn around and hand the ball off to a productive big-time running back 20 or 25 times a game. Defensively, this is a young and very talented unit. They've got a very strong front four with guys like Quinn and Long and Brockers. This is a nice front four that can generate a lot of pass rush. Their linebacking core, it starts with that beast in the middle, James Laurinaitis. Then they draft Alec Ogletree in the 1st round. That helps even more with this unit. You've got a nice secondary with guys like Finnegan and Janoris Jenkins. This is a unit that has made a lot of improvements in general. This is a team that's made a lot of improvements over the past year and a half or so in terms of bringing in the right person to run the show in Jeff Fisher, drafting well. These things kind of pay off. You look at the draft history, you look at how good the draft was for the Rams last year. It's really going to pay off this year, especially if you throw in what I believe is another good draft class for the Rams this year. I really think that this team here can be a playoff team and actually potentially a contender to threaten Seattle in that NFC West. Now, it will be contingent, I think, upon the Rams defense becoming an elite defensive unit, and that still remains to be seen whether or not they become an elite defensive unit. They have the talent to do so, they have the pass rush ability to do so, but they need to get a little bit better in the pass defense aspect, and they need to be a little more consistent just overall in general. If you want to find out what the Rams are going to do this year, look at their schedule. Look at some of the games on there. Week 4 at home against San Francisco. Week 8 at home against Seattle. Week 12 versus Chicago. The reason I put these specific games on there, you've got San Fran and Seattle. In order to win that division or to assure themselves a spot in the playoffs this year as a wild card, the Rams are going to have to win some games in the division, and they're probably going to have to beat both San Fran and Seattle at least once. So this would seem to be a perfect opportunity to do so because you get both of them at home. Now, as far as Chicago's another one of those teams that could be battling away in that wild card position. They've got Chicago at home. If they could sit there and beat a Bears team in Week 12, it could do a lot potentially at that point in time in the season to generate some real momentum in that playoff race to end the year. Again, I'm very, very excited about the St. Louis Rams and their possibilities and their potential in 2013. I think this is a team that's going to win 10 games. So help me God. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm really high on these guys. I just get that feeling about them.